Welcome to the 1 Million Years of Joy podcast. I'm Dr. Andrea Vanacker, your host, and my intention is to inspire you to find more joy in your life through the stories from our guests and the science on joy and purpose. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce to you today my two wonderful guests, Julie Lewis and Jenny Koenig, who are the authors of Still Positive, due to be released on May 23rd. Julie Lewis, a 38-year AIDS survivor and mother to Grammy Award-winning musician Ryan Lewis, was infected with HIV in 1984, but not diagnosed until the early 90s, when she was given 3 to 5 years to live. After years of silence about her disease, Julie decided to share her health journey to advance healthcare equity in the world, especially for women. She has raised millions of dollars for organizations furthering that cause through the 3030 project. And Julie lives in Seattle with her husband. And Jenny Koenig is a writer and Grammy-nominated music video producer. She's passionate about channeling her creativity into ways to raise money for nonprofits, including the 3030 project. She was a co-creator and executive producer for All In and WA, a concert for COVID relief, which raised over $110 million for COVID-related causes. She lives in Los Angeles with her husband and daughter. Julie and Jenny, it's an immense pleasure to have you both. Welcome.
We're very happy to be here.
And thanks so much for having us,
Andrea.
It's an immense pleasure. So I'd love to know more about your respective journeys and what actually brought you together in writing this wonderful book that will be coming out soon.
Okay, well, I met Jenny 20 years ago. She was my oldest daughter, Teresa's college roommate. And so we met in 2002, so almost 21 years. And so over the years, probably the last 15 years, Jenny and I have worked on several projects together, including being on the volunteer staff of Construction for Change. Jenny helped with many of the things of our 3030 project, including traveling with her husband. They're both photographers and videographers, and she'll talk more about what they did for us, but they did a lot of filming of the communities and sites where we built our healthcare facilities. And I mean, at one point, Jenny and I were mentoring college students and making dinner for 40 college students on Wednesday nights. So we have had a wide variety of things that we've done together. I just know of Jenny's great skills in writing. And so when I got to a point with my writing of my memoir where I just really felt like I needed a creative partner, I asked her and she said yes. It wasn't that straightforward. I lured her in slowly, but she did. So we've been working on this book for maybe 2.5 years together.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's an actual book. I have one right here. It's this is an advanced reader's copy, but it was so exciting to actually just see all of our effort turned into a real physical book. You know, we just opened those last week, so that was fun.
Yeah, definitely a moment of joy to be able to see something you've worked on so long, just be boiled down into this physical thing that you can hold and touch, and that's going to go out in the world. It's very exciting.
Of course. And what an impact it will have. So share a little bit more also beyond the book that's coming out soon, the realities of your respective lives with your own passions and challenges. So before we dive into the topic of joy, can you share a little bit more about your respective journeys?
I feel like my life and my journey through life is constantly ever changing. I still say that I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I feel like I have just kind of fallen into a variety of different career opportunities that just is been so much more fun and exciting and fulfilling than I could have planned. I went to college. I have an African studies minor, and then I became a photographer with my husband, and then we fell into doing music videos when Macklemore and Ryan Lewis blew up, and and then now I'm living in LA and I'm writing, and I feel like I still don't quite have a good answer to explain my life and how I've gotten to where I've gotten, but it's been really fun along the way. And then now I have an 8-month-old daughter. So that's been like kind of the latest and greatest kind of most exciting thing recently is now getting to like kind of experience the world through this new little human and who's excited about like things like strawberries, like and it's really fun. Yeah.
Congratulations. What's her name?
Her name's Kit.
Kit, how beautiful.
Yeah.
And I really love your journey because in the end, it's almost like the seizing of opportunities, right? And being fueled
Yeah.
by your passion and letting your passion shine continuously on your journey. And it's sad because some people actually do not get to tap into their passion and end up pursuing paths that does not necessarily lead them to have that much joy. But it certainly seems that with everything you've described, you've been blessed.
Absolutely. Well, and I think like what's been really interesting for me is the way that things have built off of each other too. And so like when Julie came to me and was like, first she just asked me to read the book and, you know, give her my thoughts. And I know she's somebody that, you know, really appreciates an honest opinion. So I didn't sugarcoat it. And I wasn't like, this book's amazingly perfect as it is. I was really honest about like, you know, there's a story here, there's really great parts, but also there's a lot of really boring parts. And it was, she just kind of, I feel like the version that I'd gotten of the book when, from Julie originally was very almost like stream of conscious of like, here is her whole life story. And yeah, and anyway, it was, and when she asked me to work on it, then I was just kind of like, I'm not qualified to do this. Like I've never written a book before. I've written a lot of other things, but not a book. And then, you know, kind of had some imposter syndrome in there being like, there's definitely people who are more qualified to do this than me, but then kind of thinking like, oh no, wait, like I've been there for a lot of Julie's journey. I can add to this. And I've, you know, through all the other things I've done, it built up. And this is actually something that I'm capable of doing and helping with. And it's been an absolute pleasure to get to work on this with Julie. And it is such a great story that I'm excited for the world to get to read it soon.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jenny. So Julie, please share with us your journey.
Oh, well, my journey's long. I'm a bit older than Ginny. So I think I had just sort of a typical life going for most of the time. I got married and had 3 kids and things were good. The book starts, and where my like complicated life started was in 1990 when I was diagnosed HIV positive from a blood transfusion I'd had 6.5 years earlier. So at first we went into 4 years of really not telling people because of the stigma and discrimination and the fear for our own kids to be treated differently. And then we told our 6-year-old, so, you know, if you want your private information broadcast to the world, just tell a 6-year-old. We're at the grocery store and he's like looking at the checker and says, does she know you have AIDS? And I'm like, well, she does now, honey. You know, like it was just, we were public. There was, you know, I told Ryan, this isn't a secret. You can share it anytime, you know, when you feel like you want to. And he did. I was a high school teacher at one point, a science teacher. That enabled me to join a speakers bureau for 10 years that educated people about HIV and spoke out for populations of HIV positive people who were being discriminated against and helping to people just to meet real live people with HIV. It's amazing what just having an encounter with an actual person and being able to ask questions does for someone's comfortableness and for their willingness to have a different attitude and opinion. Scott was in full-time Christian ministry, so we heard a lot of things like this is God's curse on certain people, and we didn't, obviously that was like, no. So I had a lot to say when I spoke. And so then after 10 years of that, we moved from Spokane, Washington to Seattle, which is on the opposite ends of Washington State. And I was so exhausted from being the AIDS lady that I pretty much just stopped my advocacy and started working for other organizations, which is when Jenny and I started working for Construction for Change. And it was 2014, and it was my 30th anniversary of being HIV positive. And my kids wanted to celebrate that. And it just felt weird to celebrate because I had lost so many friends to AIDS and HIV that I said, well, we could do that if we could find a way to do a pay it forward kind of good project in their honor. And so that's when, because we were working for a nonprofit construction company, the idea of building a healthcare facility seemed like a great way to celebrate for our family. But then Ryan said, we can't build one, we need to build 30. You've lived 30 years, which that was a little overwhelming for me. But somehow he got me to say yes. And so that was 9 years ago this month that we launched our project. The last 2 of the buildings are under construction right now. So it'll be probably a 10-year cycle between when we launched and when we've completed all these buildings. So when COVID hit, that's when I decided to try to write my memoir. And being a science person, it was very factually correct, but it lacked layers of interest and humor and all the things that a good writer knows how to do. So that's when I called Jenny. I'm like, I need help. And then actually, it was just a frustrating thing until we partnered up. And then it actually just became a fun project. And it took way longer than we ever thought it would. Writing a book, it's one thing to write it, but then you have all of the extra things you have to do that it's been a learning curve for us, but I'm really happy with the finished book. So that's kind of my life. I have 6 grandkids. I try to be a good grandma, which is a pure blessing because I wasn't, in 1990, I was given 3 to 5 years to live. So I never imagined being a grandma. So this has been just icing on the cake for me.
How you were able to find joy in those days and in those moments that followed the news that you've received. Was it horrendous? Was it impossible to find joy?
Well, that's the first whole section of our book. For one, there is, I'm not probably going to paraphrase this perfectly, but there is a sentence in our book in that section where it said, we were always aware that our happiness now might not make up for our sadness later. So, my kids were 2, 4, and 6 years old. And I don't know if there's a sad enough thing that can offset the joy of just watching a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 6-year-old. They were kids. And part of my job as their mom was to protect them from this big, scary thing and let them be kids. And I think it would have been harder to just be alone with that diagnosis instead of being in a community of people I love and a person of faith. So the dying thing, it was surprising. I didn't expect to die in my 30s. But on the other hand, I did have a faith that God was going to help me through that and that there's an afterlife. I believe that. So it was just a battle in my mind of like, okay, I'm awake today. Let's do something today. So you have to kind of break it down. And then also I would look at my kids every day and go, I don't want them to remember a sad mom or a depressing mom or so I would try to just find joy and share joy. But I also leaned heavily on denial, I'm just not going to think about it, and I'm just going to pretend like I'm going to be a grandma, and I'm just going to tell them what a great grandma I'm going to be. Like maybe imagining it would be better than nothing at all. So it was things like that got me through. And we did have a lot of fun in that 5 years while I was waiting to die. We took trips and we tried to just make memories. Yeah. So that's what I did.
And when that period arrived and you did not die, evidently.
Yeah.
That must have been an exuberance of joy that you must have felt.
Yes, it was coupled with all my friends dying around me and then watching that. And after 4 years, we did tell them. So and it wasn't like, oh, I haven't died in 5 years because people were still dying, So there was this awareness, like you don't go into remission with HIV. You don't, now the drugs are incredible and you're expected to, so a newly diagnosed person is expected if they take medications to live a full life. But that was not the case in the 90s at all. At any point, the drugs were getting better, but people were still dying. So
Well, and if I can tell part of your story, Julie, something that we really kind of touched on in the book, because I agree, like it is like oh, so you lived great, like you survived 5 years. We tried to explain that in the book because when I met Julie in 2002 and Teresa, her daughter, was one of my best friends in college. And, when I first heard the story from Teresa, it wasn't like, oh, my mom has AIDS and she was supposed to die and she didn't. It was like, my mom has AIDS and she could get sick and die at any time. So I think that's the thing. Even when I met you guys in 2002, it still was like this. I mean, you guys on the outside were just this happy family. And it wasn't until like I heard like, oh, actually, this is what's going on, that I realized, just because somebody like a family looks happy on the outside doesn't mean that everything's perfect. And not to say that you guys weren't happy, you were, and I think you were enjoying life, but Teresa at 18 did not think that her mom was going to be at her wedding. And I think we, as again, trying to explore that and figure out how to explain that in the book, the biggest thing I think was just like Julie was saying, that she still had friends dying around her. And oftentimes it was as simple as like, somebody's perfectly healthy one day and then they caught some sort of cold that turned into something else. And very quickly it snowballed into a bigger illness. And then they're in the hospital and, fighting for their life. And because I think that's the thing with AIDS, right, is that you're not actually dying of AIDS. Your immune system is weakened. And then, all these other things can kind of come in and attack it that healthy people, don't necessarily have to worry about as much.
Yeah. And when Teresa was 18, I had been infected for 18, she was the one that was born when I had the blood transfusion. So I was a long-term survivor. So even though all of the treatments were getting better for long-term survivors, not everything still worked. We already had a lot of damage to our immune system. So yeah, but we're hopeful. I mean, it was getting more and more hopeful as time went on. But yes, the long-term survivors in particular, many still died after the year 2000. So
the world is blessed to have you here, Julie. So thank you so much for sharing this. And, as you're sharing how you didn't want to be perceived as a victim, that's exactly what happened to me. As you know, I had brain surgery, have a huge scar here in the back. And as we were getting ready for the surgery in the days and the weeks just before, I kept saying, I cannot be remembered as a victim. If these are my last hours, my last days with my family, with the kids, with my husband, I have to find joy in this moment. The reality is that none of us know whether today is our last day or not. Brings me to the point that you also highlighted, the joy of having kids. And maybe I want to now have Jenny share a little bit more the adventures of motherhood.
I mean, it's incredible. A lot of my friends had kids before I did. I was traveling. I was doing other things. I honestly didn't even know if I wanted to be a mom because I feel like I just, had so much going on in my life already. So it's just so funny because then now she's here and I just couldn't imagine life without her. And it's just so exciting because like maybe I'm not, gallivanting out in Africa or something right now, but I am just finding so much joy, like literally, like I think one of the biggest things right now is just that she's eating solid foods and just gets so excited about a different food. And it's just been so much fun for me to be like, ooh, I love oranges. Do you love oranges? Yes, you do. Oh my gosh. And you're going to like squeal every time you see one now. So I think that both the joy that she brings, like me and my husband, just in how adorable she is and the things that she does, and, how she's so proud of herself when she could stand up now. And then also just like seeing the world through her eyes and be, we went to an aquarium, a week or so ago. And that was just incredible to see. There's this like wall of jellyfish, and they were just like, it was just her eyes just like lit up, and she's just like touching the wall and just, trying to get in there. And it's just wild to think, things like jellyfish, like, I don't know, like I've thought about them here and there in my life, but just to see someone experience that for the first time and just wonder like what must her brain be thinking. And I don't know. It's just that's what's so wild to me, I think, is just I think especially because I'm such a visual person, and a lot of the stuff that I do and create, and both in like photo and producing a lot of like video content, and just, knowing how like the world and what we see can bring people joy in so many different ways, even through a screen. Yeah, to see a baby experience that it's incredible. I don't know. I feel like it can just go on and on and on, but it's right now she's actually with Julie's granddaughters, Ruby and Ramona, at a music class. And that again is like, it's just so crazy. It's this guy with a guitar in the park, and the babies are just like enamored. And music, like it's, something that we all experience all around us, but to think about like, what must that be like to like hear a song for the first time, and to hear different instruments for the first time, and just the beauty in that. And I feel like that's what's so fun right now for me in my life, is experiencing this like very, very pure joy that a baby experiences when they are exploring the world and seeing and hearing and tasting and things for the first time.
Yes, and so much to learn from them, in fact, because if we are able even to just start our day with a fresh perspective and with positivity and just be joyful to be alive, that would certainly shift our energy in such a tremendous way to be able to embark on new challenges and do great things that maybe we never even dreamed of. So Julie, I'm curious, what brings you joy today? And maybe share a little bit more also about these 30/30 projects, because I'm sure that as a result of all the initiatives you've pursued right now, it must have brought so much joy and such positive impact to this world. I'd absolutely love to learn more about that, please, from both of you.
Well, I'll start with the 30/30 project, and then I'll talk about joy. The 30/30 project had the goal to raise the money to build 30 healthcare facilities in areas that lacked healthcare access. Many of those were clinics. Some were maternity wards, because I was infected in a maternity ward. And all of them were focused on comprehensive health, not just HIV. So we ended up building, our last two buildings are under construction. We ended up building for 18 different organizations. We don't run the clinics. We build for other nonprofits and government agencies that just don't have the knowledge to build a building or the time to stop what they're doing. And Construction for Change comes in and manages the building project. And they have a staff that are indigenous to the places where we build. So anyway, we built for 18 different organizations in 9 different countries. We built 30 different facilities. And so we raised the money for that in 5 years. But like I said, it's going to be 10 years before they're all finished, especially with the COVID delays we had. And yes, it was joyful. I think Jenny would agree with me that the most joyful part about it was traveling and to the communities and actually meeting mainly the women whose lives were greatly impacted by these facilities, not only to have a healthcare that was either free or very affordable for people in very poor areas, but, pregnant women were either having their babies at home or trying to walk the 5 to 10 miles to the nearest healthcare facility, often having their babies on the road, on the way, or at night. And then some of these facilities they would go to would not even let them in because they couldn't pay the fees. So, imagine all that. We just live in such a privileged place that their stories were like nuts, but also it was remarkable how joyful, with all these obstacles, the people that we met, they were so grateful and joyful and thankful and generous to us. And I think that really motivated our staff and us to put as much energy as we could into it. And that these buildings were time sensitive. Like people were actually going to risk their lives until we got that maternity ward. Babies would not make it. So it was just really motivating and incredibly joyful when we would travel and actually open a building and see how grateful the community was, not just for the healthcare, but having a new building in an impoverished area. It's just such an encouragement to the community. It also provides electricity and light, whereas in some places there isn't that. So, the ripple effect is students can study there at night, or Businesses pop up next door to these places because people gather there. So it provides jobs, not just for medical personnel, but groundskeepers. And, there's just all kinds of ripple effects to putting a quality building in a low resourced area. So you can add to that, Jenny. You've gone more than me actually to these places. Because of my health, I'm limited to how often I can do that.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I would just add is like, now having experienced birth fairly recently, like for years we've heard these stories of women who, were giving birth in just insane conditions, whether it's at home because the clinics, they couldn't afford them, or they were going to the clinics, but the clinics had, like a cement table for them to give birth on without electricity, and midwives were delivering babies at night they were like holding their flash or their phones and using the flashlights like kind of like in between like their neck and their chest as they're catching a baby. And I'm just
real stories.
Or yeah, could you imagine giving birth and then not having running water, to clean up afterwards? Things like that. I think just after having experienced birth for myself now, like, in a hospital with an epidural and a whole lot of medical stuff, like I have so much respect for these women, but also just am even more want to like continue to do whatever I can to support making sure that every woman has access to, a safe place to give birth.
The positive impact that you're making is absolutely incredible. So what is the future? Do you plan to continue expanding and growing this or not?
For me, I wanted it to be a 30 project limit just because of my health, because, it's easier to raise money when you have a beginning and an end of a project. So people really felt this deadline. Construction for Change continues to be a specialist in healthcare buildings and continues to build around the world for organizations that need infrastructure. One of the great things about our book is that all the net proceeds, so all money made will be donated to healthcare organizations, many of which are ones we worked with. And we will be donating some funds to Construction for Change to continue building healthcare spaces because we do believe it increases healthcare access. But we will broaden some of what we were doing to different kinds of healthcare. We're concerned right now about equity in maternal health right here in the US. People of color don't have as good of outcomes as white women in this developed country that we live in. So we're looking for organizations working on that. We are concerned with just the political leaning of women having rights to their own healthcare choices. So we're looking for organizations, send us a note at stillpositive.com if you have one to suggest, if you're listening to this podcast and want us to consider having some of the book funds go to an organization that you either are involved in or of. That's how we're continuing our effort. But I do have 6 grandkids now, so I have to make time for them. So as much as I'd like to go out and full time, keep building buildings, I'm just at a phase in my life where I have other priorities also. So we're going to try to do more through our book.
You've both created such an incredible legacy through everything you've done.
Well, I never answered your question about what gave me joy today so far.
Yes, please.
So I get joy out of simple little things. Like I love coffee. I have a relationship with my first morning cup of coffee that is totally joyful. I also have I have a cat who is like part of my morning routine. He gives me great joy. And then I do have a lot of joy in just doing something that I value every day. And, it's tiring. There's problems every day, with anything we do. But I have a real inner peace. And I think inner peace and joy kind of go hand in hand. That this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so even though the work is literally never done, I do feel like I have this peace that brings me joy, that this is what I'm not frustrated with what I'm doing. I'm just frustrated sometimes with how it's going, So, yeah.
has your perspective on how you experience joy in your life, has it changed through the years? If you're looking at the very young version of you, what brought you joy that moment? And has there been a significant shift as a result of your life journeys? Maybe Jenny, if you'd like to go.
Yeah, I think for me, I feel like probably like most people, when you're younger, you're just kind of more naive about things. And I saw the world as very simple and black and white. Through travel mainly, I feel like I actually at a certain point became very cynical and have kind of come back around. But I think that just kind of a realization that the world isn't as black as and white as I once saw it, and that's okay. And I think, like, honestly, even through writing this book and what we were talking about early with Julie about, having this devastating diagnosis, but, still finding joy in the everyday things of, having a 2, 4, and 6-year-old. Like, I think that's, is where I've come to understanding about the world, is that, sometimes, we're faced with big and terrible things, and it's about finding joy despite that, or and choosing to either push things aside or look around them, or find the good when it doesn't feel like there is a lot. For me, especially, yeah, traveling brings me so much joy at this point. But also, I think just the way that I love seeing how other people in other parts of the world experience joy. And I think the first time that I went to Africa and realized, like, these people have a lot less than me, but also they seem so much happier. Why is that? And I think that, again, that's maybe too simplistic to say, like, oh, just because they seem happy that they are, or whatever. But I think that's what I've realized, and that's what I love, whether it's in Africa or in Europe or Asia or wherever. I love experiencing now just the way that other people find joy, and through culturally, like, things that they do different than we might do as Americans. Yeah, just, I don't know, like, the different ways that people see the world, if that makes sense. I appreciate now seeing that, and I don't know, having that impact and inform the way that I see the world.
So Julie, take us now through your perspective on any particular shifts that maybe have happened. If you really look at the very young version of Julie, maybe even before you had kids, and how you're looking at pursuing joy at that moment in comparison to how you basically see it now after everything you've gone through.
Well, I mean, I think when I was a kid, I equated joy with happiness. Like, if I was happy, I was joyful, right? And, like all kids, that was all my selfish wishes coming true at any particular time. Or, Christmas was joyful because it was fun, and, those kind of things. I think what I can be pretty pessimistic, and I can be a very justice-oriented advocate kind of person with, like, a strong voice, and somehow joy, I don't even know where joy fits into all that. And I think I went through that phase of my life, maybe in my 20s, and just like justice, things should be right. I've always had a strong, since I was born, I don't know why, but since that things should be just, right? And I think what's happened since my own personal journey, and of being sick and having this diagnosis so long ago, and then watching my friends pass and traveling to other countries and just seeing the world differently. And then you add into that just all of the destruction in the world, all the things we see on the news, the school shootings, the war in Ukraine, like all these things tend to actually weigh on me. I have the personality that really feels like, what can we do? We need to do more, or like, how can we make the world safer or more equitable? So it's like, I think joy for me has come in being in communities that care, and to, even on the Speakers Bureau, as the community, as we suffered losses, there was joy also, because you only feel sorrow if you are invested in something, and so I guess for me, I look at hard places, and then I see that, yes, like Jenny said, there's joy there. It's like the hard things and the joy, they go in hand. We can't like separate them. And so I just look for ways now to create joy in every situation, and joy just might be just being there and being part of the community, and trying for every day just to care for people and learn about people, and mostly listen to people, because I think just in understanding there is more love, which creates more joy. And so as an older person, I'm just trying to listen more and to care and to see that not everybody's reality is my reality, that we live in very different spaces, and we need to like embrace each other in the space we're in and in the space someone else is in. So it's a very long-winded answer, but I don't think joy is as cut and dry for me as it maybe once was.
Thank you for sharing. And I think the point you just raised also answered the other question that I was about to ask you is, how do we create more joy in this world? And I was curious now to maybe get Jenny's view on any perspectives on how we could potentially also bring more joy to this world.
That's like a big part of why I choose to continue to do work with nonprofits. Is I think like one of the best things that we can do to bring joy to others is to do whatever we can to make sure that people's basic human needs are met. So then that frees up their minds to then, to not have to worry about like, do I have enough food? Does my baby have diapers? Like that they can then, their mind can be freed up to find their own joy, find what brings them joy, versus, having to spend time thinking about like all the stuff that you and I take for granted. And I think especially now being a mom, I just realized, how much need there is when you have a baby, and just all of the diapers and, things that, like cost so much. And I think that's why I'm so excited about like just the proceeds from Still Positive going to a lot of health organizations, maternal health in particular, because I think, when you can free people's minds up from having to worry about the very basics, then that gives them the capacity to find and experience the joy that they would like to have.
Jenny, maybe talk about what you do in the music community. And like, I feel like there's a lot of joy that comes from the creative community that makes art and music, and you've been a part of that for so long.
So my husband is a director, I'm a producer. We do a lot of music videos, and I think that's always been with music videos, has always been our thought, is that if you're putting visuals to a song, like you're not going to be changing the world with this, but like maybe you can make somebody smile for a few minutes. And I think that's definitely the way that we have seen our work, and something that like honestly compared to making sure somebody has access to healthcare, making a music video in a lot of ways seems kind of trite or frivolous, but I think it is a way. One of the videos that Jason directed, Ed Sheeran's Shape of You, has been seen by like, it's been on YouTube, I think been watched like 4 billion times maybe at this point. And the goal with that video is just kind of, to make people smile. And one of my favorite things is the female lead that we cast. She is Black and Asian. And I think, but like that was a very specific choice. We needed somebody that could box, and she could do that as well. It's a fun video if you haven't seen it. But my favorite thing about the comments is there's girls in there saying she looks like me. Yeah, I think oftentimes when you're putting something out, a piece of content that's just like a couple of minutes long, the goal of it is to make people smile and to bring joy into somebody's life in a very small way. And like, it's not, gonna create world peace, but if we can make somebody smile for a few minutes, then that's the goal.
If there would be one thing that you could change from your past, would you change anything, and what would that be?
Yes, there is one thing. Before the 30/30 Project, I would have to say that most of the things I did in my life were things that I knew I could do. like I would succeed at. I think when Ryan said, let's build 30, I was so outside of my comfort zone. And it was maybe the first thing I'd ever taken on that had a huge chance of failing. And I remember Teresa, she was the director of our program. I remember saying to her one day, because it was going slow, if we only build 15 healthcare facilities, will people think bad of us? Would that be a fail? And I look back on that and I kind of laugh, and I'm like, if I had set out to only build one, this wouldn't even be a question. And what logical day is 15 healthcare facilities a fail? But that's kind of how my, straight A student here, that's kind of how my brain worked. And so I guess what I would change is that I would just take risks. I would have started taking risks in my 20s, not wait to be 55 years old to do something that was beyond my my reach, that I wasn't really sure I would succeed at. Because if you don't aim big, you just don't ever, you underestimate yourself, really. And I wish I had not underestimated myself before that. Yeah, and my community. I mean, I didn't build 30 healthcare facilities by myself. It was a huge group of people that rallied behind us. So I think that's what I would change, is just being a bigger risk taker way earlier in my life.
All right. Thank you. Jenny.
Yeah, I love this question so much. And I think for me, I am somebody who, like, there's not one moment in my life that I would say like, oh, I wish I could redo this. I would have done it totally differently. But it's more of my mindset. And I think that, similar to Julie, wanting to have been more of a risk taker, like I look back at my life and I feel like I've had such a wonderful life and I really have enjoyed it. But I feel like, so many times in the moment, I wasn't enjoying that moment. Instead, I was too busy analyzing it. And I was too busy thinking like, okay, like, well, did I do the right thing? Is this okay? Like, what am I supposed to do next? And just too kind of nitpicking about like all the little things, instead of just actually enjoying like where I was. And yeah, I wish that that I could go back and just like, tell myself like everything's going to work out, and, just enjoy spaces. And I'm somebody that's definitely like prone to anxiety and prone to, just that then leads me to just constantly be worrying about like, okay, well, what's next? What am I supposed to do next? What am I, and doing that, I miss the joy that that's right in front of me. And I think definitely having a baby has helped me to change that, because I find myself thinking that often, like, oh no, she's like growing up, I'm missing these moments. But if I'm sitting there, thinking I'm missing this moment, like I'm missing the moment. I need to be present in the moment instead of thinking like, oh no, am I enjoying this as much as I should be? Yeah, it is this like horrible self-fulfilling prophecy that then I get going in my head. So I think that's what I'm still working on now, is like, trying to better enjoy all of those moments and actually be present in them, instead of thinking what's next.
Right. Thank you. And if you have any advice for someone that may be struggling right now to find joy in their life because of various circumstances, what would be one advice that you would give them to tap into joy more easily?
So hard, just, with
advice,
not knowing.
I used to be a bigger advice giver. Now I feel like I don't know as much as I used to think I knew. I guess I would just say, I feel like a lot of times for me, if I'm not joyful, it's because I'm beating myself up, or I'm disappointed in someone or something. And I just guess I would say, give yourself a break and give the people around you a break, and step back, take a deep breath, and look outside. I mean, look at how beautiful the world is, that the sun is out, and that our time is limited here. So yeah, it's like I feel like we need to be softer on ourselves and softer on each other. And I think in just doing that, you'll find more joy.
Yeah. Love that. Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah, my advice would be to talk to somebody. I think I often get stuck in my head as I was just saying, and sometimes it's not even, getting advice for somebody or their response, but it's for me, it's just like saying something out loud that I realize like, oh, this isn't as big of a deal as I thought. Or just putting a thought out into the world helps me to then process it better. But that's what I'd say is yeah, just talk to somebody about what you're feeling, and maybe they can't solve your problem, but like then at least you're not alone.
Yeah.
Yes, so beautiful. Thank you so much. You are both incredible inspirations, and I'm so grateful that we had this opportunity to connect and to learn more about your lives and all the amazing things that you've done and that I'm sure you'll continue doing moving forward. So thank you to both. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to seeing both of you live.
Yes, I was going to say, if you're
Yeah.
ever in Seattle or LA, we'd love to meet you in
Absolutely.
person. We're really
Thanks so
tired of
much for
Zoom
having
after
us.
COVID. We love meeting in person.
So do I. So do I. It will be an
Okay.
immense
Well,
pleasure.
thanks so much for having us.
Thank you so much.